Hey everyone, welcome to our virtual presentation focusing on the lab teaching method. I'll try to keep my comments brief here today. And if you have any additional questions, you're always more than welcome to write those down. We can chat about it when we return to class next week, or you can always email me and I'm happy to respond to that as well. So to get started, as always, we have our learning targets. By the end of the presentation, we'll be able to evaluate the importance of procedures in lab teaching. We'll identify best practices for teaching in the lab setting. And finally, we will demonstrate effective infusion of lab concepts into a lesson plan. So why do we need to have procedures in a lab teaching environment? So we really need to recognize the importance of routine, especially when working with high school or middle school students. These students crave having something similar every day. We talked about having interest approaches and bell work. That sense of continuity is a great sense of comfort for students, and it allows for more productive class periods, as we know. And the same can be applied here to laboratory settings. So by having a procedure with a specific lab, students are going to know what to expect. So I know for me as a classroom teacher, I would always have a pre-lab, a procedure, a post-lab learning structure to my worksheets and activities that I did with the students, so they knew exactly what to expect. They know that they'd have to read the pre-lab before coming to class or starting the lab. We would go through the procedure, they would demonstrate, and then before the next class or when we return to class the next day, we would do the post-lab. And also having routine structure for cleaning. And we'll talk about short charts a little bit later, but having systems in place where we know where to put dishes or where to put specific pieces of equipment for cleaning, and also what the space should look like at the end of the class period is huge. You as the teacher then also know what to expect when you have procedures in place. It's consistent for you. It's easy to prepare for. You can fold these procedures into your normal classroom procedures as well by using specific go words or visuals within your classroom. And also by having a procedure in place for your class periods, it allows for you to have less time in your head getting ready or talking about the specific procedures that you're going to be doing, and emphasize the act of actually doing the different activities that you're set out to do in your classroom. This is especially critical in 7-period days where you only have 45 to 50 minutes with the student. So productivity is the first reason why we have procedures. Secondly, safety. Procedures equal safety. Safety is a required standard before, during, and after the lab. So when they're in your space, they should remember that consistently. Utilizing consistent colors. OSHA has specific colors as well, like the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and the neutral colors as well, green, blue. Hopefully you've learned this in AGEDS 3880 or 4880 as well. But if not, I'm happy to review that in here as well. But having these consistent colors and signals within your classroom that mirror what they see in industry is always also a good thing as well. And also the storage and accurate filing of safety quizzes and contracts. So students should be able to demonstrate 100% accuracy in any safety quizzes. You as the teacher should never create your own safety quizzes. Always utilize ones that are created by your Department of Education or from a textbook source, because that clears you hopefully of any liabilities or lawsuits that could potentially happen in the classroom. So storing those safety quizzes for 10 years minimum is good, because that way you have a record of student success on demonstrating safety so that they can continue to model that in their future should they ever ask you questions about if students were able to demonstrate safety when they were in your classroom. Additionally, procedures help us focus on learning. Procedures take the drive of the focus away from how and more onto the what we're doing. So if we have consistency in how we're structuring our class period, students can focus more on what they're learning. Additionally, you always want to make sure that you are modeling procedures to help students understand and visualize what is expected. Having some type of walkthrough, especially in a shop class, of what the space should look like at the end of each class period, and then consistently holding them to that standard is critical. So some practices that have worked for me, I have a couple here on the screen. You'll notice on the next slide, there's some additional ones as well. We will want to use at least one of these practices or strategies, if you will, within our lab microteaching. And more to come on that as we dive into the next couple of class periods as you prepare for your lab microteaching. But to get started, we want to have those safety quizzes and contracts on file for a minimum of 10 years. The Agriculture Experience Tracker, AET, also has an opportunity for you to have students complete safety quizzes online, and then you can keep the records electronically so you're not worrying about storing hard copy papers everywhere. Additionally, having key lab setups. So again, pre-lab, procedure, post-lab, and these are all great ways to set up your actual lab. So there's continuity from experience to experience, even if the content is changing a little bit on each one. Additionally, it's important to discuss the merit of paper versus digital. Now, for me personally, I've always loved using paper handouts, especially for labs, because students can almost use the procedure as a checklist. I would not recommend having them use their phones or their computers for procedures or lab activities, simply because it's a little bit less sanitary. There's lots of germs that are on phones and computers. So if you're in a foods lab, especially, it might not be the most clean option for you. Additionally, students like to have, like I mentioned, that checklist. So having that available to them in a packet form or hard copy is usually very helpful. Additionally, having some specific types of roles within any type of team setting, this can go not only for labs, but also in team projects in the classroom as well, can also be a good practice to utilize. So for instance, maybe in a foods lab, you'll have a gopher, and that gopher is somebody who's going to go get the materials that you need for the day and ensure that you're working with the instructor, the teacher, you in this case, to ensure that they're having the right supplies to complete the actual lab. You can have a timer, you can have a manager who's overseeing the roles that everybody else in the group is doing, et cetera. You can kind of divide these roles however you want, but then it ensures that every person on the team has a specific job and they're doing that. And that's not to say that those roles can't merge or blur from time to time, but that way everyone knows exactly what at a minimum they're expected to be doing. Classroom management is also a really important practice that you need to utilize not only in a lab, but just in general. One thing that I like to use is over here on the left is this cup strategy. So this is a very inexpensive strategy. You simply need to buy one classroom set of cups and you're set for your teaching career. I had the same cups for 5 years of teaching and they still look great. I'm pretty sure I have them at my house somewhere. So I give each student a stack of cups. So there's a green cup, a yellow cup, and a red cup. So at a lab activity, whether it's a fetal pig dissection, or maybe it's a foods lab of some sort, or maybe it's something simple like a simulation that we're doing in class that doesn't really have a lot of equipment or whatnot, by utilizing these cups, students and groups are able to send a signal to me for what kind of support they need. If it's a green cup on top, that means that they're good to go at this time and they don't have any questions. If it's yellow, they have a question, but it's not pressing, or they're still able to continue to work without getting that question clarified right away. And that signals to me that I'm able to go visit them as soon as possible to chat with them. And a red cup means there's something urgent that needs attention and we are unable to continue working until you answer our question. So then they're able to reset the color back to green once they leave. And then I can kind of visually see where people are in the room, because if everybody is raising their hands, shouting your name, it's going to be hard, and that will drown out eventually. So having this cup strategy is a good visual for you as a teacher. And I highly encourage you check that out. I think I had about 15 sets in my classroom because I usually would only have a max of 30 students, and most of the time they're working in pairs when I did the strategy anyways. Additionally, time cards. So this is something that I utilized a lot in my egg mechanics classes, or even in the foods classes when we're doing lots of cooking. Essentially, you have students clock in and clock out, where they evaluate their productivity for the class period, their ability to clean up, and kind of the expectations that you set for them in the beginning. They give themselves a rating out of 5, and most of the time they're a lot more critical of themselves than I would be of them. So they have some honest time to reflect on how they did. And then also they write 1 or 2 sentences of what they accomplished in the class period or questions they have. Then at the end of the week, they turn that in. I review it. I see what questions or concerns that they have that maybe they didn't tell me directly in class. I can have follow-up conversations with them. And that's an easy 25 points to put in the grade book, 5 points a day, approximately. That's another good strategy that you can have within your classroom. I also encourage the use of chore charts for cleaning up. So students sometimes can be a little bit picky about what they are or are not assigned to do. So having a chore chart allows you to have consistency from class period to class period and ensure that everyone's having the ability to split the load evenly. So let's say Bobby is in this cell right here. On week number 1, he's going to be responsible for welding helmets and gloves. On week number 2, he's assigned a 2. So then he's going to be welding jackets. Okay, so you can have this posted around your shop facility or your classroom, and you would be able to utilize this as a way for students to know exactly what their role is for cleaning up. Again, modeling this at the beginning of the semester is a great strategy that you should do so everybody understands what they would be expected to do when they're assigned each of these different tasks. Accountability, having students hold one another accountable. If the space isn't good, we are not leaving the class period or the classroom until everything is cleaned up. I will tell you that if you start to let the cleanup slide, that's going to make your task as a teacher a little bit more difficult, because you're going to want to be doing that cleaning to make it safe for that next class. So it only takes really 1 or 2 times for you keeping that rowdy welding class or food science class after the bell to make sure that the room is set up exactly how it needs to. And they will begin to start to hold one another accountable to make sure that your standard is kept. But if you don't do that, it's going to continue to get more and more messy, and it makes it more difficult for that next class and for you as the teacher. Maintaining the space is also another really big concept that I like to talk about when working with other people who are thinking about setting up a lab space. This specifically goes for kitchens or for agriculture mechanic facilities like a welding shop or a wood shop. So it's important to recognize the difference between community and program use. So as a high school ag instructor, career tech ed instructor, you have the ability to determine the rules and procedures most of the time for your space. It is very important that you reined in, if you will, and let that space be for your program. I'll give an example. I've worked at schools before where they have wanted to use the kitchen or the metals and wood shop for after school programs like robotics or theater setup, even for different staging and equipment that they're wanting to build for their props, or even the foods lab they're wanting to use to cook for a, say, football game, for the students that are going to be about to play a game, right? They're wanting to make some snacks or food for them. Now, it might seem like a great idea to let these people come in and use your space, but a lot of times they don't end up cleaning the space to the way you want it to be cleaned or to the standard that you're wanting. Additionally, it can also pose as a safety concern, especially if you are not there and there is a community member or somebody who is not licensed to teach agriculture mechanics or food science even, and something goes wrong, because then you could be held liable even if you're not in the space potentially. So if they're insistent that they use your space, I would inform your administrator and let them know that you as the ag teacher are going to need to be there to monitor safe use and that you should be compensated, because you don't want something to go wrong in the facility. And if something does go wrong or some equipment goes missing, you have no way of proving who took it or what happened. So it's always good to make sure that you have clear expectations or boundaries between community and program use. Now, if you're the robotics advisor or the theater coach or whatever, great. You can kind of double dip there and it's a good facility partnership. But if not, I would encourage you to either be present with those students and hopefully get compensated for doing that, or encourage them to find other places to use those types of equipment. Additionally, troubleshooting, more often than not as a teacher, sometimes it can be difficult to know how to use a specific type of equipment or tool. Fortunately, you're going to have lots of people in your corner, whether it be a janitor, custodian, or maybe a community member who understands the different tools and equipment. They can come in and help you. So I would strongly discourage letting your janitors or people just come in and freely use the space, even if they know what they're doing, because again, they might not clean up appropriately. But if you are there with them and they're showing you how to use something or they're helping you troubleshoot or fix, by all means, tap into that resource. Additionally, maintaining the space should really be both a teacher and a student responsibility. However, these look a little bit different. I'll give an example. In my welding class, students were responsible for completing the different criteria that were on this short chart that we just talked about. So you can see down here, pretty basic items. But while they were doing that as the ag teacher, and supervising that facility, my task would be to go around the room and make sure that, there's no leaks in the hoses on our oxyacetylene outfit, that everything is put back where it needs to belong, that there isn't any like weird thing with the ventilation system. So I was ensuring that the whole facility and the specific pieces of equipment were safe, and kind of do a walkthrough before my next class came in. So that is your responsibility during that time. The student should be doing the routine cleanup of the equipment and the pieces that they're using. Then obviously at the end of the day, it's always good to do a walkthrough of everything just to make sure everything is clean and organized and up to your standard, and put in any orders of equipment that are going, or different parts that are needed to repair or maintain equipment that you have in your facility. Policies and consequences, I would advise you to overreact always. Now, I don't mean that you should go in and start yelling at a kid who makes a simple mistake. But one thing that, especially for me in the shop classes, that was really important, even in like the sciencey classes where we're doing dissections, is always wearing proper eye protection or PPE, personal protective equipment. Now, I hammer that into them literally like as we're going through the safety, and they know that they need to have the proper PPE to do the job. If they do not follow that expectation, they are removed from the shop, and the consequences continue to get more severe as they go. And I believe even by the third time, and I never reached this, but on my syllabus, I believe it says by the third time they're reminded to do proper PPE, they are removed from the class and they're sent to the principal. I don't take safety concerns lightly. I want to make sure that all my students are safe, and all ag teachers should be the same way. So whether they do it a certain way at home or at work is irrelevant. You need to have very clear and firm standards in the classroom. When you overreact or when you are very vocal about errors or issues that happen, it prevents other ones from occurring. So you may have to yell especially with a safety breach the first time. You don't want to be rude to the student by any means, but you may need to be very tactful or firm in how you interact and discuss that with the class or with those particular students, but it will prevent problems from happening in the future. I've never had to remind a student more than once to wear proper PPE or even a class because they know that that's the expectation. And if they're not meeting it, there will be consequences. If problems continue to persist, it is important to involve administrators and families. I would do both. Okay, so it's always good to contact both of these entities. I would usually start with the family and then go to the administrator. No principal or school administrator should ever not support you in ensuring student safety, right? Because if there is a safety concern in your shop or your agriculture classroom in any way, they're going to want to make sure that those are addressed, because if they are not, that could result in some type of lawsuit or student injury, and they will not want to deal with that. So if there are, say, too many students in your class, or there are students that are not following your safety procedures, I would always involve your administrators and go at it from the approach of it is a safety concern. And most of the time when they hear that, they will perk up and listen to you because they want to ensure student and teacher safety in that space.